it's been 10 years since the Afghan war started, and I remember it distinctly, mostly because of I had left work, and my boss called me and goes, "Get to the TV," and I had a cohort who did an afternoon show who was against it from the beginning, and took a serious hit. My friend Ron Smith. And
he wasn't against the Afghan war. He was against the Iraq war.
He was against the whole thing about invasion. Yeah, I remember from day one he thought it was a bad idea. And it's interesting because the not going after the Taliban, he didn't have a problem with that. Obviously, the bombings, but just the occupation. And it's interesting to see over that period of time what's changed. What we actually have. We've had Al-Qaeda and Taliban on the run in 10 years. There's been quite a bit of loss of life, but most of it in Iraq. You talk to people like Duncan Hunter, our congressman here, and he'll tell you without question, Enduring Freedom was hugely successful. And the people there realize, they look at the United States in a different way. On December 1st, 2009, Obama announced the deployment of 30,000 additional troops over a period of 6 months. The surge strategy, and it worked. But where do you go now in a country like Afghanistan? How do you move forward? And do you do, as Charlie Wilson so famously said in that movie, Charlie Wilson's War, do you now do the end game? Or do you screw up the end game? Now that that there's been significant damage done to that enemy. Dr. Walid Phares is with us. He is he handles terrorism news for Fox News, and he joins us here on KOGO. Dr. Phares, are we near the end game for the United States, and what do we do now?
Well, you just said it in the introduction. If you want to mess up the end game, that's our own choice. The reason for why we went to Afghanistan, other than the fact that we were retaliating against those who attacked us, that's everybody recognizes that, is the understanding that the network which was been built in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, was not just an Afghan business. It was the center of a worldwide web of jihadists. And now we see it years after that intervention. Look what they have built in Pakistan. And Pakistan is a nuclear country. They have massified to Yemen, to Somalia, to the Sahel of Africa. They have cells here. So the fight in Afghanistan is not just about Afghanistan. It's about the center of that jihadi network. Now, the question is, have we been successful? Yes, we were. We removed them from the regime. Have we been successful in the war of ideas, i.e. to enable the Afghani people to defend themselves and fight for themselves? That's where the jury is still out. If we now cut a deal with the Taliban, in any shape and reason, after all what we've done, then we come to your introduction, then everything will collapse. If we enable the Afghani government and people, more important than the government, to do what the Arab Spring has done, meaning enable people to respond to terrorism, then we could say that, yes, the end game is here and we have won.
Yeah, because people forget that many more Muslims have died by acts of terror in the last 10 years at the hands of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and the like. And that was there's an old saying, is that, you can't eat a Koran. People have to have an economy. They have to have a way of life, and they get tired of this rhetoric, this hollow ideology, and respond. But they got to have something to respond with. They got to feel like somebody's got their back. And I don't know if we've set a very good track record for following up. You go and look after the first Gulf War and what happened to the Shia, at the hands of Hussein.
Right.
And I just wonder. I'm trying to imagine if we have the political will to do this.
Well, first of all, we have to have the political understanding. Our public has not been well educated as to who are we facing off with, because over the past at least 2 to 3, I'd say even 4 years, the bureaucracies in Washington have neglected the ideological dimension, actually have blocked the identification of the threat. People need to understand it's not about a religion, it's about an ideology. And that is an ideology that created Al-Qaeda, not Al-Qaeda created it. So yes, it's a victory to take out bin Laden, to take out al-Awlaki. But what people need to understand that these are the products of an ideology that has been there for many, many years. And the question is, what have we done, not just in building schools, but in terms of the curriculum of the schools in Afghanistan? That's where I worry.
Yeah.
Those kids who were 10 years old in 2001 are 20. So they are the new soldiers, the new teachers. This is where I think we lag behind in the war of ideas.
The war of ideas, that's an interesting phrase, because in order to win that, you can't just can't talk. You got to walk, and you got to really show that you're willing to support those. We're talking about ideas such as democratic republic, or economic growth, or capitalistic freedoms. And you're not going to see any of that if you can't back it up with boots and guns. I mean, you really can't, right?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, you have to create a space for freedom, meaning keep the Taliban and the jihadists at bay. If we don't do that, we can't even begin a war of ideas. We've done that for 10 years. What we need to do, or we should have done, and continue to need to do, is to engage with civil society, women's movement, students' movement, labor, intellectuals, cab drivers, people in the cities, and people in the in the countryside, and help them organize. I mean, this is their battle. A war of ideas is their battle. What they need us for is to preserve their freedom until they are able to defend it. That's the real equation.
Yeah, and that's a little tough. Picking your friends, especially when they're not, when they can't buy your products, and but they have the potential to be good, strong allies. That's hard for our politicians. They don't do it well. They haven't in the past. Dr. Walid Phares, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right.